I stood in the pouring rain, hands shoved deep in my hoodie, watching a moving truck unload polished marble tables, leather sectionals, and boxes marked Amanda's Crystal. It was a Tuesday. My brother Kyle was grinning like a politician at a ribbon cutting. He jogged down the stone steps of his brand new mansion like he owned the world. Hell, maybe he did. My name's Mason Blake. I'm 34, live in a one-bedroom above the hardware store. I manage part-time in Waltham, Massachusetts. This palace, it was Kyle's wedding gift from our parents. $2.7 million, just handed over like it was a toaster. Mom was circling the crew like she ran the move. Her voice was high and bubbly, all fake nice for the neighbors. "Don't scuff the banister," she chirped. "Oh, Kyle, imagine the twins playing on that staircase." She hadn't even noticed I was soaked through, standing at the curb like some forgotten neighbor. Kyle waved at me, laughing. "You finally made it. Thought you'd show up in your work boots." He wasn't wrong. "Nice starter home, huh?" he added, winking. "Nothing fancy, just 3 stories and a wine cellar Amanda calls her Zen Cave." Amanda floated out behind him in her Pilates leggings and a designer raincoat, handing a mover what looked like a framed Vogue cover. "Make sure this goes in the dressing room closet, not the primary." I forced a smile and gave a short wave. Mom finally clocked me and rushed over, clutching a roll of blueprints. "Oh, honey, you need to settle down," she said, tugging my sleeve like I was late to class. "The Morgan's daughter is back on the market. Remember her? Practical, stable, real hips for grandbabies." I blinked rain out of my eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "You still working at that little store?" she added, already looking away. "Still running it," I said flatly. Kyle chuckled. "Bet the new grill sets are flying off the shelves, huh?" Amanda laughed like that was comedy gold. Mom turned back to the movers, shouting instructions. I took a step back, toes in a puddle, and checked my watch. I gotta head out, covering a shift. Kyle raised an eyebrow. "You always covering something?" I didn't answer, just walked back to my rusted-out Chevy and slammed the door behind me. Quick note before we go on. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I pulled out of that cul-de-sac, the mansion shrinking in the rear view, windshield wipers smearing the rain. I didn't even know what pissed me off more, how easily they looked down on me, or how normal it felt. 2 days later, I was standing at the counter in George's Corner Mart, still damp from the drizzle outside, boots squeaking on the tile, same coffee, same wrinkled dollar bills, same headache from dealing with inventory reports all morning. George slid my cup over and nodded at the lottery display behind him. "Check your ticket from Saturday," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "I think you got it, Mason." I blinked. "Got what?" His eyes twinkled like he knew something I didn't. "Just check. You still got that slip?" I dug around in my wallet. Crumpled between a gas receipt and an expired coupon, there it was. The ticket I bought on a whim with my last $5 because the customer in front of me said, "Hell, someone's got to win." I pulled out my phone, thumbed the screen, and froze. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. "George," I said, barely able to breathe. "These numbers match. All of them." He leaned over the counter, squinting. 96.8 million, he whispered. "Jesus!" My knees felt weak. I grabbed the counter for balance. Without missing a beat, George hit the switch to lock the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and walked me to the back. "You sit down," he said. "Don't touch that ticket again. I'll call Lisa." Lisa, his daughter, was a financial attorney. Last I heard, she did estate work for high net worth types in Boston. She showed up less than an hour later. No heels, no makeup, just jeans, a blazer, and an expression like a math teacher at finals week. She didn't waste time. "Do not tell anyone, not your parents, not your brother. You don't exist until this is airtight." I nodded. "Okay." She had me sign the ticket immediately, then took photos, scanned it into her files, and put the original in a steel lockbox George kept under the register. "We're setting up a blind trust under a new name," she said. "You'll stay anonymous as long as the state allows. I'll manage the filings, taxes, and media shields. You're not going to be anyone's ATM." It was all business, but damn, it felt like someone finally saw me as worth protecting. While she talked, I sat still, hands gripping the edge of the table. My brain kept skipping, back to Kyle's stupid joke about my grill sets, Mom's voice telling me who I should date, Amanda laughing like my job was a punchline, And now this, almost $100 million. Last thing, Lisa said, packing up her laptop. Keep living your life like nothing changed. No new cars, no sudden moves. Let me handle the rollout. I stood up, legs shaky. You're not going to take off with the ticket, are you? Lisa gave a half smile. Only if I want George to murder me in my sleep. George barked out a laugh. She's solid, Mason. You trust her. I do, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Back at the door, George patted my shoulder. You keep your head on straight, kid. Money's a tool, not a personality. I stepped outside, rain still coming down in thin sheets. The air smelled like wet pavement and lottery dust. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Kyle. Family brunch tomorrow. Wear something decent for once. I stared at it for a second, then typed back, can't. Got something more important. I hit send and shoved the phone in my pocket. Then I walked down the block and bought a second cup of coffee, this time with whipped cream, because I could. 3 weeks later, I couldn't leave my phone on for more than a few minutes without it buzzing itself off the table. Mason Blake, local hardware guy, claims full $96.8 million Powerball prize. I'd asked Lisa to delay the press release as long as legally possible. She did, but once it hit, there was no unringing that bell. My voicemail hit full in under an hour. High school buddies I hadn't spoken to since prom wanted to catch up. 2 exes suddenly wanted closure, or dinner. Some woman from Florida messaged me on Facebook and swore we were second cousins through marriage. But Mom, Dad, and Kyle, dead silent for the first 24 hours. Then Mom's name lit up my phone, back-to-back calls. When I didn't answer, she sent a long, blistering text. You should have told your family first. This is humiliating. We had to find out from the internet like everyone else. Kyle followed with his usual passive-aggressive garbage. Congrats, I guess. When are we talking? Dad kept it short. Let's discuss how to approach this long term. I ignored them, every one of them. 2 days later, they showed up unannounced. I saw them through the window. Kyle driving a Range Rover that probably guzzled more gas than my old Chevy had ever held. They pulled into the driveway of the 3-bedroom place I bought through the trust, a quiet home tucked behind a park in Needham. Not flashy, just clean and calm. A front porch with a swing. Shelves inside filled with books I actually read. I opened the door before they could knock. Wow, Kyle said, stepping in. This is nice for a first place. Better than a 1-bedroom over a hardware store, Mom added, her tone like she was doing me a favor by saying it out loud. They took in the living room, wood floors, vintage record player in the corner, framed photos from my college days, and a few of George behind the counter at the store. Dad ran a finger along one of the bookshelves. Cozy. You could probably afford something a little closer to us now, though. Just saying. I walked over to the side table and picked up 3 envelopes. No fancy packaging. Just plain white paper. I handed the first one to Kyle. 10 grand, that loan you keep bringing up every holiday, paid back, with interest. He looked confused. You didn't have to do that. No, I didn't, but now you can stop holding it over my head. I gave the second envelope to my dad. That's every cent you and Mom ever spent on me. Clothes, food, school supplies. I added a little buffer just in case. Mom blinked fast. Mason, that's not... You said I owed you. Now I don't. The third envelope I held up between my fingers. This one's different, I said. Proof I started a nonprofit. Trade school scholarships for kids who work with their hands. Welders, mechanics, HVAC techs. And I'm launching a small publishing press for blue-collar writers with stories worth reading. People like me. Kyle narrowed his eyes. You're turning this into a pet project? No, I snapped. I'm turning this into a life. One I get to build, without your judgment, your pity, or your approval. Dad's face went stiff. We never judged you. I almost laughed. You judged me the second you handed Kyle a mansion and offered me a date with the Morgans' practical daughter. Mom sat down on the edge of my couch like it burned. You're being dramatic. You're being blind, I said. I don't need help managing my life. I needed space to live it my way. Kyle scoffed. So we're just... What? Cut out? No, I said, walking to the door and holding it open. You're adults. You'll figure it out. They stood there a second too long, like they didn't know how to leave a room they didn't control. Then Kyle stuffed the envelope in his jacket, Mom grabbed her purse, and Dad gave a tight nod. They walked out. I locked the door behind them. The next month felt like fishing season, and I was the trophy marlin. First came guilt. Mom sent a handwritten card, sealed in perfume, saying how sad she was that we were growing apart. Then came the flattery. Kyle texted me photos of us as kids with captions like, "Remember who always had your back?" Then came the threats. One morning, I opened my inbox to find an email from Dad titled Important Contacts. Inside, a list of financial advisors, wealth managers, and legacy planners I'd never asked for. With the note, just in case things spiral. Amanda's social media suddenly got quiet. The brunch photos stopped. Kyle stopped tagging her altogether. I didn't reply to anything, not a single call or text. They must have figured out where I was working, though. My office was in a converted print shop near downtown Waltham. Industrial beams, exposed brick, stacks of manuscripts, and donation boxes for the literacy program. I was finalizing grant approvals when I heard the front door open hard. "Is Mason here?" a voice called out, breathy, shaky. Emma, my cousin on Mom's side, stepped into view. Her makeup was smudged, nose red. Behind her, Kyle stood stiff with his arms crossed. "We're drowning," she said right away. "Kyle didn't want to come, but I told him you needed to see us like this." She reached for my hand. I didn't give it. "Everything's gone," she went on. "The startup folded, Amanda's out. Kyle's on 2 wait lists for interviews. And your parents," her voice cracked, "they're not doing well either." Kyle finally spoke. "You have the means to help. We're not strangers. We're family." I didn't move. I reached down, opened my drawer, and pulled out 3 manila folders. I handed one to Kyle. "Logistics coordinator, full-time, pays well, decent benefits." I handed the second to Emma. "Fundraiser assistant at a nonprofit in Cambridge. Amanda's qualified for it. I've already spoken to the hiring manager." Then the third. "This one's for Dad. Junior partner role at a mid-tier advisory firm in Dedham. Legit opportunity. No favors pulled." Emma looked stunned. Kyle looked insulted. "You want us to go work like everyone else?" he snapped. "Yup." "We expected better," he muttered. I nodded. "That's your mistake." He yanked the folders out of my hands and stormed out. Emma hesitated, then followed. The door slammed behind them hard enough to shake the floor. I picked up the next manuscript. Didn't miss a beat. By the time the sun dipped behind the strip mall across the street, the launch party was in full swing. We strung up dollar store lights across the parking lot and had 2 charcoal grills going. Ribs, hot dogs, foil-wrapped corn. A local guy brought beer in metal tubs packed with ice, and the speakers blasted Tom Petty loud enough to drown out the traffic. Inside the repurposed print shop, now home to True North Press, the tables were stacked with our first release. Paperback collections with real weight to them. Stories written by people who'd never seen their name on anything outside a W-2. George showed up in his old corner mart apron, even though he hadn't worked a shift in months. "Just for luck," he said, grinning like I'd just graduated college or hit my first home run. We kicked off the readings with Donnie, a plumber in his 60s who'd written a fast-paced thriller about a sewer crew getting trapped underground during a blackout. He got 3 full laughs and a round of applause. Then JR, a long-haul trucker from Maine, read 3 short poems about rest stops, motel coffee, and the silence between radio stations. His hands shook holding the paper, but his voice didn't. We had kids from the literacy nonprofit take the mic next, 8, 9, 10 years old, reading stories they'd written with volunteers, stories about space cats, haunted vending machines, and one about a talking hammer who fixed broken hearts. I shook more hands that night than I had in my entire life. Listened more, too. Every single person had something to say. A project idea, a thank you, or just that they'd never felt seen until now. Near the end of the night, when the crowd thinned and the folding chairs were scattered, a little girl tugged on my flannel. "You Mason?" she asked. "That's me." "I wrote about a man with a magic wrench," she said proudly. "Everything he fixes stays fixed forever." I crouched down. "That's brilliant. Sounds like the kind of man the world needs." She nodded like it was obvious and skipped back to her mom. That was it. That was the whole point. I was about to help one of the volunteers carry out empty beer boxes when the door creaked open behind me. Kyle stepped in. Alone, hair messy. jacket wrinkled. He looked around like he didn't know what kind of place he'd just walked into. People noticed him, sure, but no one swarmed. No one offered him a seat or handed him a plate. He came up to me slow, stopping just outside arm's reach. "We're losing the house," he said, voice rough. "Amanda left." I didn't say a word, just looked at him. He looked back, then glanced around the room, at the kids, the writers, George pouring himself another beer. Then he shoved his hands in his pockets. "Figured I'd tell you straight." I didn't say anything right away, just turned and walked toward the back. Kyle followed. We passed the supply shelves, the stack of folding chairs, the storage room with the busted fan I kept meaning to fix. I pushed open the door to the break room. Small couch, mini fridge, old coffee maker that hadn't worked right since July, and nodded for him to sit. He didn't. He just leaned on the wall, arms folded. I leaned against the desk. "All right?" "Say it." He took a deep breath. "Amanda packed up and left, the day after the second notice hit. Said she didn't sign up to be someone's emergency." I didn't flinch. "She's not wrong," he said. "Startup burned out last quarter. My partners bailed. Investors ghosted. I've been applying for everything, even warehouse gigs. Nothing sticks." He rubbed the back of his neck like it hurt to talk. "Dad made some bad calls, gave out insider-style advice without saying it directly. SEC sniffed it out. His biggest clients pulled their money last week. He won't admit it, but he's done." I crossed my arms. "And Mom?" "She's trying to refinance the house, without telling Dad. She used my name on one of the forms. Figured with my connections it'd push through." "Jesus," I muttered. Kyle looked down. "I didn't come for a check, Mason, I swear." I stared at him. "So why are you here?" His voice cracked just enough to make it real. "I don't know who I am anymore." That hit harder than I expected. "You figured it out somehow," he went on. "I never did. I've just been coasting on whatever came easy. And when it stopped coming, I had nothing." I sat down slowly. "You want to know how I figured it out?" He didn't answer, but I kept going. "I worked 60-hour weeks in a place that smelled like WD-40 and wet cardboard. Ate lunch behind the counter with a pen in my hand because it was the only damn time I had to write. I got laughed at by customers, told I was wasting time. Hell, even George told me once I should stick to paint displays. I let that hang in the air a second. But I stuck with it, because it mattered to me." He sat now, quiet, shoulders hunched. "You tried to skip the hard part, Kyle," I said. "That's what's breaking you now. You never learned how to bleed a little before you win." He didn't argue, didn't roll his eyes, just nodded. For once, he wasn't defending himself. I opened the drawer behind me and grabbed a folder from the stack. "I've got logistics piling up for the next 3 events. Inventory, vendor orders, shipment scheduling. It's a mess." He looked up, cautious. "I need someone who can show up on time, learn fast, and not run their mouth. It's not glamorous. It's just work." "What's it pay?" he asked. "Fair. And on the books." He nodded once. "Okay." I stood. "You start Monday. Trainings with Jasmine. Don't piss her off." He almost smiled. "No promises." I walked out of the break room without waiting for more. He followed. Kyle was still getting the hang of the label printer when I heard the front door creak open behind me. I turned and saw them. No blazers, no pearls, no forced smiles. Just tired clothes and tired faces. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks. Dad's shirt was wrinkled, tucked in without a belt. Neither of them spoke right away. They just stood there in the middle of my office like it was a courtroom. I didn't offer them a seat. Mom broke first. "We're losing everything," she said, voice flat. "Retirement, the house, the status we built." Her eyes flicked around the space, like she was still looking for something to cling to. "It's all going." "And now you want me to fix it?" I said. Dad stepped forward, shaking his head. "No, we want to understand. How you got this far without us." I paused, then turned and walked toward the back. They followed. I took them through every part of True North. The open concept office, the shipping room, the event board on the wall, the corner with hand-labeled bins for book donations. I introduced them to writers who'd never finished high school but had novels in print. Kids reading aloud from storybooks they helped publish. Photos taped along the walls, volunteer days, our first check presentation, Ella with her magic wrench story. This, I said, turning to face them, is what I built with the money you didn't think I could manage. Mom looked down. Dad looked at the photos like he was seeing them in slow motion. We never gave you a fair shot, he finally said. No, I replied. But now I have one, and I'm not wasting it on making you comfortable. They didn't argue. I pulled 2 folders from the front desk. Inside are names of financial advisors I trust, people who'll be honest with you. Not salesmen, not manipulators, just help. That's all I'm offering. Dad nodded once, silent. Mom clutched the folder like it might float. They turned to leave, but at the door, Mom stopped and looked back. We're proud of you, Mason, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Even if it took us too long to say it. I stared right at her. You were never supposed to say it, I told her. You were supposed to believe it. She didn't answer. I walked them out. Kyle was back at the sorting table, cracking jokes with Jasmine about shipping labels and author headshots. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up chapter 16 of my book, a memoir, kind of. I didn't just win the lottery, I won my freedom.